Okay, cool. So welcome to my pre-visualization for my short film notes. So just quickly getting into the cinematography. Going to be using lots of high-angle shots to make Jack appear weak or vulnerable, to illustrate that the character's in jeopardy or mortal peril. So throughout the entirety of the film, we're always going to see Jack from a high angle or always being looked down upon, to always be reinforcing that theme that the character of Jack is in mortal jeopardy. This high angle shot will also juxtapose to the low angle shots that we will use to always display the post-it notes, or any reference to the girlfriend within the film, as she will always be shot from a high angle, whether that be extreme or moderate or very, very slight. To always highlight the power dynamic between the two of them, and the fact that the girlfriend character is always in charge of Jack's life from the very beginning. Also going to be using box-in shots, so having a vertical or horizontal impingement within the frame to create that sense of claustrophobia, illustrating that Jack is trapped. So shots that emulate prison bars, close-up, zoom-in, pull-outs and pull-ins, blinds, anything that creates a claustrophobic kind of feel to the film. Static shots, so we're going to be using a lot of static shots to trap the character and to illustrate his helplessness, as perfectly used by Steve McQueen in 12 Years a Slave. So as we can see here in Solomon's lynching, so the reason I want to use these shots within this film, not only for the practicality of myself doing the principal cinematography, but also because static shots trap characters. They trap characters in the story. They don't allow the audience to be able to match their emotional feeling, their emotional fears through camera movement, and they create a very cold neutrality to the shot that means we can only watch, we can't look away. So we have to endure what the character's enduring without being able to match their emotional feel or expression at the time. Vertical tilts were also used to accentuate the power of the post-it notes, and the power between Jack and his girlfriend and the discrepancies between the two. Going to use push-ins to direct attention to specific details such as the calendar or post-it notes. Pull-outs to emphasise isolation and abandonment. Now I can't do that on myself as I'll be doing the principal photography, so that will be focused on things like photographs of Jack on his own to pull out and really show the isolation that he feels. Zooms do a similar job but can actually lend themselves to a more unnerving feel for the film because the human eye can't match zooms. We can't zoom in or out with our eyes. So it's an unnatural camera movement which can actually create more tension than a pull out or a pull in. Camera rolls I'm going to use in the third act of the film to try and disorientate the audience and visually reinforce the themes that Jack is under so much strain and his world is being turned upside down by being stuck in this abusive relationship, and also to highlight his eventual mental break towards the end of the film. So going to use a lot of large apertures for when it's close-ups of Jack to create a shallow depth of field. This will isolate him from the background of the shots, and we can use this to really communicate Jack's isolation again, particularly in the final act when Jack and or the girlfriend manifestation character having their talk, going to be really focused on their faces, so having the shallow depth of field will really allow the audience to feel close to the characters and to really experience the emotions that the characters are going through at the time. Small and medium apertures will be used for the wider shots throughout the film, and this will enable us to establish the setting and reveal key details within the changing background. For example, when the paintings change, or when the flowers wilt, or as the flat gets more and more tidy. So again, lots of static shots, just to contrast his emotional instability with the stability of the cinematography, giving the film an unnerving and unsympathetic neutrality. Lighting, it's all going to be practical lighting, lamps, candles and natural light. Mainly from a practical standpoint, I don't have access to any film lighting, but also these practical lights help centre the film in a more domestic environment, using things that people can relate to and will make the film feel like it's happening within a space that they can see themselves in their kind of home, to really bring the characters into to really bring the audience into the film. Again, using different coloured bulbs, particularly red bulbs, within the background throughout the film to really have that connotation of danger that the colour red will signify, and to convey it in a more subtle way. So the production design, the key metaphors, the flowers, which will be wilting throughout the course of the film, the tidiness. The film will go from a lived-in kind of house to a hyper-tidy kind of house to illustrate the front that a lot of abuse victims put on to the outer world, trying to say everything's fine when actually inside it's all falling apart. The paintings will change from peaceful to a thunderstorm to the scream to reflect Jack's emotional standing at the time. The colours, we're going to be using red as a very key colour throughout the entirety of the film, as a warning of danger, showing violence and anger as the sort of key warning colour. And then costume choices towards the beginning of the film, they'll be very flamboyant, very reflective of Jack's personality. Towards the end of the film, they will be bland, they will be unreflective of who he is, but they will show his emotional state of his personality being broken down by this abusive relationship. So here's some examples of the visual metaphors we're going to be using, which we can see here in this video.
Even if you want certain colours, like different coloured bulbs, you know, they're really cheap, aren't they? In some shops, you know.
Shout. Oh,
they're like super cheap, especially red ones.
Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant, because red literally, well, it's going to be one of the main colours of the film.
Be a big show of like his mental state, you know.
Yeah.
You know, clothes are always a good judge of that.
Like that.
Yeah. I thought it'd be just a good touch to show that the girlfriend truly is just focusing on. She isn't doing the same things, you know, like having diets and, you know, controlling her clothes or whatever, you know.
Yeah,
I think it'd be a good
double standard.
Yeah, you know, maybe at the start, you know, as tidy as possible. Maybe film, you know, some shots of him, you know, tidying all that, because it doesn't seem too crazy for your girlfriend to tell you, "Can you tidy the house today?" It's not.
So we're going to be using dark and light colours within the set and costume design to create a contrast in the change of the emotional tone of the film, using light and bright colours at the beginning and transitioning into dark colours towards the end. So our colour palette for warm colours will be oranges, yellows to display Jack's happy nature, and then bland colours such as whites and blacks to show his character being broken down. This is within his costume. Also use pattern clothes to show his flamboyant and joyful personality, again transitioning to plain as his personality is being forced out of him. So costume ideas, colourful boxers, shirts, towels at the beginning of the film. The towel will transition from a yellow to a red, again to demonstrate that warning colour towards the end of the film, and to also show stability of the relationship and the happiness of the relationship has turned to anger and turned to violence. Here's some examples of some of the makeup trials we've been doing. This is just the first stage. As you can see, it's very pale. It doesn't quite match the skin tone that we're going to be going for to try and put across that more feminine character of his girlfriend. So going to be buying some more foundation, some different eyeshadow colours. Again, it will be red to match the lipstick, so that really pops when the colour fades out of the film. And again, reinforcing those motifs of danger, anger coming from the girlfriend. I found this really cool concept called shepherd tone.
Shepherd progression or shepherd tone. It's a series of ascending notes on a scale that, by emphasising in volume different elements of the scale, it can continuously go up, like a corkscrew effect or a barbershop pole. It's always rising. As one storyline is peaking, another one is building, and the third one is just starting out.
Full speed, people! Keep coming around! Keep coming!
So, using shepherd tone, we want to create a soundtrack that's being originally written by a good friend of mine, Rob Much, who's also the sound designer for this film, utilising sounds within the domestic setting, as the film is set within a flat, to create a soundtrack that is foreboding, tense, and ever-building towards the end of the film. So we're going to be using noises like washing machines, kettles boiling, water trickling down the drain, a shower, razor scraping across facial hair. These are just a few examples. We're going to put together an original soundtrack that is ever-building, everlasting, and creates a very tense and off-putting environment so that the audience can never really settle within the film, because the whole point of the film is to shock the audience about the subject matter. So we want to try and create that feeling through all aspects of the film, and sound design is one of the key elements that really pulls a film together.
You know, it has some dissonance, a bit like disturbing in the background. Definitely hear keys starting with something quite sweet and maybe going a bit sour later on.
It starts off more positive, and then as it builds and builds, it gets more and more foreboding and negative, and then, yeah, that kind of crescendo at the end.
And, you know, that crescendo bit just kind of raise it to an almost kind of deafening level, so get like, you know, like the white noise you get on the TV.
Yeah.
Something like that, like going really, really high up,
Yeah.
and then the song, and then goes credits and the song cuts in.
Yeah,
So
that'd be perfect. Yeah.
So that song we're talking about at the end there, we're going to be using a melancholic, almost upbeat tone kind of song with the credits and some of the final shots to kind of juxtapose society's laissez-faire attitude to male domestic abuse and to reinforce that feeling of uncomfortable, unsettling kind of vibe we're going for with the film, so the audience can never really settle and they're always on the edge of their seat. And using a lot of jump cuts to add urgency to the scenes and match cuts to add symmetry within the film, just to make it a bit more aesthetically pleasing and transition a bit easier for the eye to focus on. But using symmetry within the film also allows us to then change locations in a quicker way, so we can be using those sort of match cuts and the symmetry in those transitions to progress time faster within such a short time frame of 5 minutes for the film. Some screen tests there put together by Stephen, my cinematographer. So towards the beginning of the film, the colour is going to be saturated, not to the point where it's unrealistic, but to the point where it's heightened just enough that the audience can kind of see that there's a colourful hue about it and that life appears to be very positive for Jack. We're going to be using warm colours, oranges and yellows, which will evoke feelings of warmth, home, love, tranquility, coming from our practical lighting sources. These will then be juxtaposed with blues to highlight the cold, harsh realities of Jack's life. So the way that Matt and I are going to do this are in the edit. We're going to be using colour grading so that any light that's coming from a practical lighting source will have warmth and yellows coming through it, hitting Jack's body. And then on the other side of Jack's body, the light or the colour of the frame is going to just be an off blue, just a little bit colder and a little bit harsher, just to reinforce this metaphor that actually the front that Jack's putting out isn't accurate. And he's got this pressure of the cold, harsh realities of his abusive relationship coming at him all the time, pressurising him and battering him emotionally. As the film moves on, it will then be desaturated with colour. So using a post effect called bleach bypass is going to create a cold and gritty effect as the film transitions from colourful eventually to black and white. As the film transitions to black and white, the only colour that is then going to be prevalent will be red. Reds of within the set design, any red that's in the frame will always pop as red, again to reinforce that danger and that anger and that violence. Also to make any bruises, any blood that's going to be used, any makeup, that's going to really pop to re-illustrate the danger, the anger and the violence. So we're going to be using colours that complement each other. So when it's the oranges and the yellows within the warmth of the light in the early part of the film, it will then be juxtaposed by the blues and the blue-greens to give that cold kind of effect.
You go tripod or handheld, just naturally.
Tripod, so like static shots is the idea for this, because I kind of want to juxtapose Jack's emotional instability with the stability of the cinematography. So that way it will kind of create like an unnerving, unsympathetic neutrality.
The idea is that he's uncomfortable and feeling trapped, so anything that you can do to make people feel the same way.
I
mean, so again, the shallower depth of field is going to help with the whole like the claustrophobic sort of thing. If it's a lot smaller, really tight, fair enough. And then I think it's the same thing as that as well. If you've got the focus on the face, fair enough. But one of the things with that is if you're gonna keep that focus on the face, and there's going to be a lot of like really up there. I guess you're going to be the actor anyway, aren't you? So you know that you're going to have to give it a hell of a performance. I think the first one, it's more uncomfortable. The suddenness, the stealth is like it's in your face and it's boom, 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 boom. But with the dissolve, it's a bit more like, oh,
yeah,
you know, going on a gradual but noticeable decline into sadness.
Yes,
Growing in colour, washing out throughout, keeping the reds and the pinks, and with the black and white with specific colour highlights of the poster. See a nice warm orange light. You know what I mean? Just sort of mirror it and put a little blue glow
on the other kind of side of the frame. Yeah,
put a lamp there and it's quite orange. Yeah, and then just on the side of the frame, you just want a little bit of cold.
Yeah, so it's almost like he's being attacked by that cold, the cold colour and the harsh reality of what's actually going on in his relationship the entire time.